¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Welcome back to Spanish Lessons with Professor Jason. Glad to have you back. In today's lesson, I'm going to talk about how it is that we use Spanish to express future plans, actions, and events. It's a topic that many of you have requested over these past few months and years. Now, rest assured, it's not that complicated for English speakers learning Spanish because you basically have the same two forms or same two options when it comes to expressing future plans, actions, and events. And that is, first of all, you can use the future tense, the equivalent of the English I will, you will, she will, they will, etc. And you also have in Spanish a very close equivalent to the English expression going to, as in she's going to watch a movie tonight, or we are going to have dinner after the game. Okay? So you have those two options, and in this lesson I'm going to present on both. I'm also going to share the verb conjugations or verb forms needed to use them, and of course provide, as I always do, numerous examples that you can adapt for your own needs. Alright? So let's get started by looking at those future tense verb conjugations. So, conjugations in the future tense are fairly easy to come up with, since in most cases you simply add the different endings you see on the table below to the infinitive or unconjugated form of the verbs. And the endings that you can see are the same whether you're talking about an AR verb like llegar, to arrive, an ER verb such as comer, to eat, or an IR verb like escribir, to write. So you can see here, you just take the infinitive of llegar, add the A ending for yo, llegaré, and you have I will arrive, comeré, I will eat, escribiré, I will write, right? For the to form, again, you take the infinitive llegarás, add the as, o comerás, escribirás, etc. All right, now before we look at some examples in sentence form, let's point out a few things about this conjugation pattern. First, as I just mentioned, the endings for each subject position are simply added to the infinitive or unconjugated form of the verb you want to use. Second, the endings are the same for each class of verb, AR, ER, and IR, which makes this an especially easy tense to work with. And thirdly, all of the endings, except for the first person plural or nosotros or nosotras form, are stressed on the final syllable. Look at that. Comeré, comerás, comeréis, escribiréis, right? So except for the nosotros form, because those are stressed on the second to last syllable, and that has no written accent. So for everything except nosotros, stress on the final syllable, written accent. For nosotros, stress second to last syllable, no written accent. Okay, one important aspect of conjugating the future tense is that many commonly used verbs break the pattern that we just saw. So you have to add the endings, the same endings we just saw, to irregular stems. These verbs and their stems, they have to be memorized. There's no way really to predict them other than just memorization. But the most important ones to remember are the following. So, like I said, we're seeing very common verbs on this slide. Poner, to put, decir, to say or to tell, salir, to leave or to go out from, hacer, to do or to make, many uses, poder, to be able to, tener, to have, querer, to want to desire, to love in some cases, saber, to know or to find out, and venir, to come. So what you see in the second column are those irregular stems, which you add the future endings in the third column to. So if I want to say something like, I will say, I'm going to take the irregular stem and add the ending, diré, I'm going to come up with. Or you will say, dirás. Or they will say, dirán. I just have those three subject positions as examples so that you can see how you come up with those forms combining the irregular stems and the regular future tense endings. If I wanted to say, for example, I will have, tendré, you will have, tendrás, they will have, tendrán, or I will find out or I will know, sabré, sabrás, you will know, sabrán, they will know. The thing is, we're talking about irregular verbs with irregular stems in the future tense, and all you can do is memorize these. And it's really important because these verbs are extremely common. Alright, now if you have a good memory, make a mental note, try to remember that any verb that in the future uses an irregular stem is going to use that same irregular stem, the ones we just saw in the previous slide, same stem to conjugate for the conditional tense. Now the conditional is the tense we use to talk about what people could do or more commonly would do. Okay. Now I'll upload a video on the conditional tense next because that is very helpful to study the two tenses together, the future and the conditional, because they use the same irregular stems that we just saw. All right. Now bringing our focus back to today's lesson on the future tense, let's talk a little bit about usage. The future tense actually has two uses, and I'll show you examples of both. Let's start by looking at the first usage, which is obviously to express what people will do or what will happen in the future. Here are some examples. So, just as examples of the future tense in regular usage, we have the following. I will call you on Wednesday. Yo te llamaré el miércoles. Or, Juan will return before lunch. Juan volverá antes del almuerzo. They will arrive tomorrow. Ellos llegarán mañana. When will we have the results? ¿Cuándo tendremos los resultados? Or, the meeting will begin at 10:30 a.m. La reunión comenzará a las 10:30 de la mañana. Or, we'll do everything that they ask. Haremos todo lo que nos pidan. You will see that I'm right. Verás que tengo razón. And again, if you listen to those forms, you're going to hear the accent fall on the final syllable, except in the case of the nosotros forms. Llamaré, volverá, llegarán, tendremos, second to last syllable, comenzará, haremos, again, second to last syllable, and verás. Now, one thing about using the future tense in this way is that it tends to convey the idea that a person's plans or predictions or intentions are quite firm. Also, when the future tense is used, it conveys or implies more of a commitment on the part of the speaker. Now, the same is basically true of English, right? If somebody asks me, are you going to the meeting? And I say, I will be there. Yes, I will be there. It sounds a little bit more committal, more certain than if I just say, sure, I'm going to go, versus, yes, I will, right? So keep that in mind with Spanish too. When people use the future tense, it can have a more of a certain committed ring to it, okay? Now, a quick note on the other usage of the future tense, right? The future tense can also be used to express conjecture or possibility, or the fact that somebody's wondering about something in reference to a current or present action or idea. Sounds a little complicated, but here's an example. If somebody asks me, for example, what time it is, ¿Qué horas son? And I answer, no sé, ¿serán las 11:30? ¿Serán las 11:30? It's as if I'm actually saying, I'm not sure, but it's probably about 11:30. No sé, ¿serán las 11:30? Right? So, you actually use the future tense in questions or statements to indicate that you're wondering or expressing conjecture about the present. And here are some more examples of that usage. So if I say, for example, ¿Cuántos años tendrá esa mujer? ¿Cuántos años tendrá esa mujer? I'm really saying, how old might that woman be? Or if I say, ¿Qué sabrá la policía? ¿Qué sabrá la policía? It means, I wonder what the police know. Or, ¿Dónde estará Felipe? ¿Dónde estará Felipe? Using the future tense, it means, I wonder where Felipe could be, or really, I wonder where Felipe is, because the emphasis in terms of time frame in all of these examples is not on the future, but wondering about the present state of affairs. Okay, now let's talk about the more informal method, or the more casual method of talking about the future, the equivalent of saying that somebody is going to, or even gonna, do something. Now in English, as you know, we very often talk about the future by saying that somebody is going to do something. For example, of course, I know for our English speakers this is review, we know this, but many people who watch these videos are from other countries and they enjoy the little insights into English as well. So we would use going to say, for example, I'm going to watch some TV, or she is going to make cookies, he's going to run in the park later, we're going to go to the beach tomorrow, or they're going to wash their car together. In addition to any ESL benefits a slide like this might provide, I also wanted to show these examples because I'm going to come back to these and basically translate them into Spanish when we talk about going to, that form in Spanish. Okay, if you think about it, we use this going to form of talking about the future much more often than resorting to the more formal sounding I will, or we shall, he will, etc. In casual conversation, we use the going to form, and this is true of Spanish as well, we use the going to form almost exclusively. Now you'll hear some people, especially when they talk about Spanish grammar, insist that going to, the equivalent in Spanish, should only be used for the near or the immediate future. I believe that when you're talking about English or Spanish, this is false. You can use going to or the Spanish equivalent whether you're talking about the immediate, the near future, or the distant future. It sounds perfectly fine to say in English or Spanish that I'm going to travel to Greece in 6 months, or she is going to marry that guy in a couple of years. It doesn't matter. Use going to or the Spanish equivalent whenever you want to sound less formal. Now, not only is the usage of the going to expression basically the same in Spanish as it is in English, but the form or the syntactic structure is also very similar, almost the same. All you do in Spanish to express going to is to conjugate the verb ir, to go, in the present tense, add a, and I'll show you this on a slide in a minute, and then also add the verb, the main verb, in the infinitive or unconjugated form. Okay? Here's a quick review before we get to those examples, a quick review of the present tense forms of the verb ir, to go, in Spanish. So, in terms of those conjugations for the verb ir, to go in Spanish, we have yo voy, tú vas, usted va, él or ella va, nosotros vamos, vosotros vais, or vosotras vais, ustedes van, ellos or ellas van. Okay? So, on the next slide, let's take a look at some examples of how to use going to, or the ir plus the a plus the infinitive construction. We're just going to convert the same examples we saw a couple slides ago when we looked at the English examples. So if I want to say, I'm going to watch some TV, I would say, voy a mirar un poco de televisión. Voy a mirar, taking the verb ir, conjugating it into the present form for yo, voy a mirar. If I want to say, she is going to make the cookies, it would be, ella va a hacer las galletas. Va a hacer las galletas. Or, he's going to run in the park later. Él va a correr en el parque más tarde. Él va a correr en el parque más tarde. You could switch it, right? Más tarde, él va a correr en el parque, etc. If I want to say, we are going to go to the beach tomorrow, notice that here we're going to use the verb ir twice. Once conjugated, once in the infinitive. Vamos a ir a la playa mañana. Vamos a ir a la playa mañana. Or finally, they're going to wash the car together. Ellos van a lavar el carro juntos. Ellos van a lavar el carro juntos. So those are examples of converting those sentences from the English going to into the Spanish using ir, a, plus the infinitive form. Okay, here's an idea. If you want some extra practice, try converting the sentences we used as examples when we talked about the future tense, or examples of the future tense a few minutes ago. Try to convert those into the going to form in Spanish. Just go ahead and pause the video here and restart it when you're ready to look at the answers. So, pause. Alright, unpause. So you must be ready to look at those answers. Here they are. Here's the answers of what the future tense examples we used above would look like in the going to form. Let's see how you did. Okay, so your answers are, for yo te llamaré el miércoles, we would convert that to voy a llamarte el miércoles, or perhaps te voy a llamar el miércoles. Both forms are correct. For Juan volverá antes del almuerzo, we're going to come up with Juan va a volver antes del almuerzo. Instead of ellos llegarán mañana, ellos van a llegar mañana. Instead of ¿cuándo tendremos los resultados?, we're going to have ¿cuándo vamos a tener los resultados? Instead of la reunión comenzará a las 10:30, blah, 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 it's going to be la reunión va a comenzar a las 10:30 de la mañana. Instead of haremos todo lo que nos pidan, future tense, we're going to go with the going to form, vamos a hacer todo lo que nos pidan. And finally, you'll see that I'm right. Veréis que tengo razón, future tense. In the going to form, it's going to be vais a ver que tengo razón. Alright, that concludes my presentations on talking about the future in Spanish. Just a quick summary review. We've looked at the future tense, its usage as, of course, talking about the future, as well as conjecture or probability in the present. And we also looked at the more casual, more common ir plus a plus infinitive, or going to expression in Spanish. And I hope you found this lesson to be useful, helpful, beneficial. As always, I welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. So please go ahead, leave a comment, and let me know what you thought about this video lesson. This has been Professor Jason, as always. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hasta pronto. Ciao.